Okay, so when you wrote this book, who was the intended audience and which audience were you trying to tap into and how were you trying to help specifically?
I'm really trying to help people who aren't where they want to be, but don't know what to believe because there's so much information out there and misinformation and dogma. I have so many patients who are like, okay, I just can't ever eat carbs. I know if I eat less carbs, I lose weight. So carbs are bad. Lower is better. The ultimate is zero. Now I'm keto. Now I'm carnivore. And people just get religiously and dogmatically locked into one thing that is usually helpful to a certain degree.
Mhm.
Like, yes, reducing your refined carbohydrate intake is incredibly powerful. That does not mean that if you pull that all the way down to zero,
Mhm.
you're going to be better off. So there's kind of a sweet spot. Each of these interventions is on a U-shaped curve,
Mm.
where a moderate amount of carbohydrate reduction is awesome, and then driving all the way to zero might not give you any additional return on your investment and could possibly slightly go negative at
Mhm.
some point because you're not getting any fiber and you're not getting water from like fruits and vegetables. And now your energy density of your diet actually went up a little bit. Most of these diet religions have this facet of truth and they're right about one part of it, and some amount of applying that is good. But then people overdo it because people like to just zoom in on one thing and
Mhm.
just take it all the way to infinity. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's human behavior. And so this book is really for the person who doesn't know what to believe. They go on social media. Here's somebody who's totally ripped and jacked and they're vegan. That's got to be the secret. Here's somebody else who's ripped and jacked and they're pure carnivore. That's got to be the secret. Well, it can't be both of those. Like, so what the hell? So now, like, I don't know what to believe. I'm so confused. If this worked for this person, that means I got to do it too. But
Mhm.
here's somebody who did the exact polar opposite. And now what does that mean? And so this book really just cuts through all the noise and all the confusion and just lays it all out for you. And anyone who reads this will know exactly why people have success to a certain extent with low carb or low fat or paleo or vegan or insert any diet pattern, diet religion here. And it gives you the power to kind of mix and match and take a little bit from all of them, and you get this major return on investment with just like a slight pull on all of these levers without like pulling the lever all the way to zero and then breaking it off and then actually starting to go backwards, which is what I see all the time with people who go, extremely low carb and then keto and carnivore. So in a way, this is kind of an escape hatch for anyone who's stuck on a dogmatic religious sort of diet religion, or for someone who just doesn't know what to believe, so they just eat whatever tastes good because, like, clearly anything, there's too much information out there, and people have paralysis from that.
Yeah. One of the things I really wanted to know from you is too, when it comes to this, because you've openly said, I eat mostly these high satiety foods through the day, or this is at least what I recall hearing from some of your other interviews. And you said, but I always save some room at the end of the day for something kind of more palatable, fun. Because where I think a lot of people's brains would go is, oh, let me just maximize satiety per calorie, right? Like, let me take one good thing and just kind of really do it all in, and you're like, "No, no, no, you can still have this fun stuff." So in like all the trials that you've done or experimentation that you've done, what would you say is a good balance between the high satiety, high protein foods and still getting in a little bit of fun stuff? Like, is there a certain ratio or amount of the day that you should dedicate to that, where you can still ream a lot of the benefits from the high water, high fiber, high protein, but have a little bit in the tank for something fun?
Absolutely. And like every single the book just talks about this over and over and over and over and over again, how everything in life is on this U-shaped curve where there's like a sweet spot in the middle and then there's like a clearly too low and a clearly too high. And so satiety per calorie is the same way. The satiety per calorie scale is like 0 to 100, where a zero is, chocolate chip cookies, and a 100 is just like celery and watercress. And you really want to be like a 50, which is like steak and eggs and a salad. If you are way too low, that's just clearly bad, right? If you just try to live on cookies, this is going to be horrible. But too high is bad as well. It's not like, oh, higher is better. Well, I'm going to be 100 and just eat celery and watercress. You physically can't get enough calories from these foods, and you'll be starving out of your mind, and it'll just be an instant fail. So the secret is to find some sort of middle ground. Yes, you should absolutely have some higher satiety calorie foods, and then some lower ones as well. And you have to find this sort of sweet spot in the middle. And it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, and it's also going to depend on your activity level. So you can't just prescribe
Sure.
score for someone and just have them nail that. What you want to do is look at where you're at and then just slightly go upwards in a very gradual, sustainable, reasonable fashion. So if your diet right now is 80% junk and 20% healthy foods, maybe you should go to 30% healthy foods and 70% junk.
Hmm.
If you just jump straight to 99% high satiety foods like celery and 1% garbage, that's not going to work. That's definitely going to be a fail. So, like, what's the answer? What's the secret? What's the spread? I can't tell you. All I know is it's probably a little higher satiety per calorie than where you're at currently if you're not at your goal. And so the whole secret to this is just slow, gradual, slight improvements in a progressive overload fashion where it's just a little bit higher than it was the day before, if you know what I'm saying. It's kind of like resistance training where you don't just throw an extra 1,000 pounds on the bar and you've never done a bench press before. You're going to, start out with just the bar and then add like, 5 pound plate on each side. And so you're doing the same thing with this satiety per calorie. And you're trying to get the ratio of junk food to super healthy food as higher than it was last time in a gradual, sustainable, progressive fashion. Somewhere in there, you will find the right balance for you.
Yeah.
But you're not going to find it without this just gradual titration and slow improvement over time compared to previous. And that's all I'm looking for anybody is to just be aware of where you're at and then just make it slightly better one day at a time.